Yo guys, this is Reinhardt, this is your favorite Russian talking, and you see my Necromancer here, and you see all this numbers, all this number crunching, tons of number crunching, tons of sub priorities. That's what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to be discussing the most optimal stats to be a very scary Necromancer in PvP. So let's get started first of all with the Necromancer concept. Remember I told you, above 40% HP, Necromancer does very like mediocre-ish damage, not the highest, but then his damage becomes much higher and much stronger. So first of all, the concept of a Necromancer is very simple. You kind of want to deny in threes the enemy team to set up the kills, and you also want to assist your team. The first of all, what I want to let you know is the Fire Skull from Ancient Sorcery increases damage that enemies take by 21%. So when you throw a skull at somebody, your team assists, they will do 21% more damage, and this is great when it comes to actually doing a very good coordinative damaging strikes. The second one is a Torment of Hell. Obviously, when you pop the fear onto the ground, not only affects your abilities, and your abilities crit 100% of the time, also what happens is your allies crit on those targets. The talent is very simple. Enemies affected by a Rift of Horror will take critical damage for the next 5 seconds. So, with that said, that will be your bread and butter to start getting the enemies low and low HP. But obviously your dot as well, which is left, right, it's Plague. And with Accelerated Decomposition, it becomes beautiful dot. So, with that said, this video is going to be all about the stat priority, the symbols, and everything else. So first of all, let's talk about the symbols. So from what I personally like to go more on the rat feel of a Necromancer, meaning the plague damage. So the first thing I'm going to be hunting in here are plague damage, but it has to be balanced between the plague damage and the skull throw damage as well. Skull throws are incredibly high and burst damaging abilities. Mine could actually crit up to 20k damage. 20k damage. Very rarely, but they get up to that high. Usually when they crit, they do crit about 12 to 13k, and I'll explain you what makes them crit so high. So what I usually like to do is I like to pick up first is a plague damage, and the second is skull throw. That's the best amulets you can do. But if you don't have that, then amulets that increase your skull throw and then give you extra plague damage on the backhand is also very good. From what I found out is basically the first stat increasing modifier on your amulet, like a skull throw, increases that ability by a whole bunch, and then the second ability will be halved. So basically for here, skull throw inflicts 825 more damage, but then the plague damage is only 28. Where on the other hand, we have this guy, and they're both same item level. Plague does double the damage. Instead of 28, it does 57 more damage, and then the skull throw inflicts only 412 extra damage. So with that said, personally I like to go with the extra plague first, skull throw second, and that's more of a sustaining build damage when the targets start getting low. Obviously, if you like to do something like a quick gims on the enemies in your fear, then you want to go with extra skull throw damage in the beginning. So that's with the amulets. Now let's take a look at the Mayhem. Mayhem weapon, this one is crappy actually. Mayhem weapon, I don't have anything else. I'm waiting for the weapon, one of my weapons to come in. Mayhem weapon actually has to be, increases the damage done by a Necromancer in a Lich form by 22%. That's the best enchant possible. And then on an offhand trinket, it's actually gonna be your shield. Your banished shield is actually 66% more powerful, and it lasts 40% longer. Not only people don't want to CC you when you pop that shield on, they don't want to DPS you, and if they don't do that, the longer 40% duration makes you literally run as an unCCable unit out there on the battlefield. Now the shield is obviously procs or when you sacrifice your minion. That's for the main weapon and additional weapon. So Lich damage and banished shield. For the amulets, remember I said plague and then skull. Now for the rings, you would want to go with the strength and luck. With the other ones is accuracy and critical chance. Basically, I tried Valor build on a Necromancer, and my thinking was if I go targets below 50% faster, the more effective I'll be as a Necromancer. But it wasn't doing that much of a nice burst or nice gims as well. So what I did is actually switch from that up to the strengths. And boy, when I actually throw my skulls and they crit, they do tons of damage. So for the rings, the best stats are strength, luck, with the secondary stats on the accuracy and the critical chance. Now the question is, what does the actual accuracy do? Well, the accuracy brings your minimum and the maximum base damages closer to each other. Basically, it increases your average damage. Good example. Let's say without accuracy, if you do 600 to 1000 damage, then your average effective damage will be 800. If with accuracy your damage will be 700 to 1000, right? Then your effective damage will be 850. So it brings up minimum damage of your abilities, minimum base damage of your abilities a little bit higher, thus increasing your medium damage. Mathematics, my friends, mathematics. The second portion of it is luck. Luck is your critical damage. So the higher you have a critical damage, the better it becomes. Now this build is very, very weak, I would say below 15k prestige. And simply because you don't get other benefits from your temples, which I will talk to you in just one moment. And then, obviously you want to get that if you have a lot of strength and a lot of critical damage going, what next do you want to do? Have a high critical chance. Now my critical chance is not that high, but it's still at 22.8%. So that means my dots are hit relatively fast. But the biggest thing is having a high critical damage gives you a really nice burst potential when you pop your fear on the ground and all your hits literally critical hit on the target. It becomes so much damage that I sometimes did like 60 to 80k damage in one fear. Very, very powerful. So that's with the rings, amulets, additional weapon and the main weapon. Now we're gonna look at the orders. For the orders, the first thing you want to go with the accuracy. Accuracy also increases your strength and increases your strength capability. So for example, I want to show you something. I have 2552 strength, right? And it's 835 to 1376 for my main base damage. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna deactivate accuracy, 10% accuracy, and I'm gonna go to my stats. Now I see my base damage got dropped significantly, my minimal damage got dropped significantly, and my strength got dropped as well. So with that said, accuracy is a great tool. It increases that bonus damage, it increases the amount of strength you get, or the effectiveness actually of the strengths they have on your base damage. And while it does start relatively slow, it actually will keep scaling up the more you're keeping up with the stat itself. And I'm running at roughly about 34% accuracy, which is relatively high right now at the prestige levels that we have. So for the second, again, it is accuracy. Now the third one, and this becomes a must and very awesome thing to have, is a crushing blow. Crushing blow, what it is, it basically when you crit, it basically increases the base damage of your ability by twice, and then you can crit on top of it. So your 5-6k skull throws or 8k skull throws not gonna crit for 12-14k, will crit for like 20-22k. So with a crushing blow, the biggest synergy, if your crushing blow procs and you crit on top of it, that's so much random damage that you can actually put on that will do the job and will kill. So crushing blow is the must, and I first didn't believe it, that's why I actually got it with a critical chance, but once I played with it, it's pretty awesome. So I have accuracy, crushing blow. Next thing is something that you don't need it now, but in the patch they're fixing it. It's defense penetration. It ignores target's defense levels, it ignores target's shield, it increases damage dealt into shields. You know how many you have a troll knights and paladins that are almost invulnerable, or lightbinders? This will literally mess them up. Russian forums are flooded with people whining about this ability. Next one we have is accuracy again. For the next one after that, we have critical chance. Yes, obviously you want to have your critical chance going so you can start generating tons of damage via critical chance. And after that we have again crushing blow, and from there again defense penetration. So the stats priority are, ready for this, would be accuracy for the accuracy slots, crushing blow for the crushing blow slots, critical chance for the critical chances, and defense penetration. So 4 stats that you have to be augmenting through your different temples. Whew. Last but not least, what we're gonna talk about is symbols. And for the symbols for the Necromancer, and obviously I don't have a lot of stuff unlocked, I'm still gonna have to unlock a lot. So you want to maximize on your dot potential, at least that's for my playstyle. Meaning that my dot will have a lot of meaningful stuff with it. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go with the slowing attacks. Having your dot proc slowing attack is absolutely critical and it's beautiful. Then you want to go with the maximum recoil, which increases your critical damage by 10% for each level of the symbol. So I already have 2 symbols of that, so my critical damage is increased by 20%. And then obviously you want to go with the ultimate strength that increases your strength. So not only accuracy increases the effectiveness of the strength that have on your stats, then you also increase the strength of the stat itself from the symbols. You're gonna end up so much nice base damage, so then when you crushing blows in double that base damage and you either add the critical damage on top of it, you become deadly. Very deadly Necromancer, my friends. So from there, you want to go with the Pain Shock and the Paralyzing Shot because they're very good. Pain Shock is a range damage kind of a mini nuke that will proc the Paladin symbol, which is a 4-second vulnerability on the enemy. Kind of like a trinket in WoW. You want the enemy to trinket first before you put them in the hard CC, so that's kind of an idea here. And then the Paralyzing Shock is obviously to increase the... It's a stun. It's a 3-second stun on a 20-second cooldown. What's not to like about it? Now, the next that you're gonna want to go is Clever Maneuver. Beautiful. By the way, question is a lot of question people ask me. How many symbols you can be running at the same time? And the answer would be 29. 3 baseline plus every time you max out your class, it gives you 2 additional. So I maxed out my Paladin and Necromancer. That's why I have 7 of those. So you want to go with the Clever Maneuver because it's just too good. I'm gonna play around with the Desperate Resistance. I think it's actually not a bad talent. The next thing you want to go with is at least, I think Balance is very, very good. I want to see how it works in PvP. That's one of the question marks. Ruthlessness is definitely, your main burst comes in a fear. And the more damage the enemies take while they're in a fear or stun, the more beautiful you are, my friend. Then here, this one it comes, and this one is acceptable from going from Necromancer to a Witch. Lacerated Wound. Every time you crit on a target, you apply dot that also dots the target, and that dot can also crit and do a lot of bonus crit damage as well. And it's beautiful because it gets up, it sometimes does almost a half of your actual dot damage, depending how often it procs crits. But if you go with a critical chance, your dot will crit often and will proc Lacerated Wound. Next one I want to play with is this one. Having a slow effect applied to you has a 20 chance to restore the dash, because dashes are awesome. This one I think is a must to have. The character takes 10% less damage for each of the level of the symbol under Stun, Fear, Blind or Immobilize effect. There's so much CC going on, so having that damage reduction up to 30% is actually going to be very, very critical. This one I want to play with. When taking damage, character speed can be increased by up to 15% for each level of the symbol. I want to see how often does it proc. But Necromancer has a huge mobility issue, so I think this might actually be a good thing. This is garbage. Impulse Berry. Don't take it. I just took it for the sake of not having other talents to take. Impact Stun is very, very good. Every time you critical hit somebody, you stun them for 1.5 seconds. And it only can happen once every 7 seconds. Now this is going to be having a minor nerf. It will be a 2-second stun on a 12-second internal cooldown. But even with that, having your dots rolling, having high critical chance, will stun your opponents. And a lot of people try to kite the Necromancer. They try to line aside the Necromancer. And this will make them pay for it. Next one is Mark of Death. And it's beautiful. Your attacks may leave a mark on the opponent. Once removed, it will inflict 20/30, if you put 2 talents, of the damage inflicted to them while they had the mark. So basically you kind of apply debuff on the targets with your abilities that will do like a 20%, like it's basically a small damage buff that takes a snapshot of how much your attack is the damage to a target, and then we'll do 20% of that snapshot damage. So if I fear somebody and I'll do 40k damage in a fear and I proc Mark of Death, it will give me additional 8k damage. It is big, it is awesome, it is great, and it's a must to have. Life energy consumables is not my thing. Consumables are just for consuming, nothing else. This is something I want to play with. Tactical defense, melee defense, and the range defense increased by 5% for each level of the symbol. If defense penetration really mitigates that, then this is worthless. Otherwise, this is great. Now let's talk about the actual symbols of the classes and which ones are a must to have. So first of all, I want to talk with a Pally symbol is a must to have because it gives you 4-second invulnerability if you take 10% of your HP damage. There's a lot of bursts coming out in this game, and having this is awesome. Also, you can manually proc Paladin symbol by just sacrificing your HP and summoning pets. It will proc the Pally symbol and you will not take damage, meaning that you will start the fight with either extra time lapse or extra 15% of your HP. Next thing, I want to play around with Berserker. Berserker basically have the damage increased. The lower your health, the higher chance for it to activate that 20% damage increase buff, and that would increase lich damage by 22% when you're in a lich form. If this procs and you have a weapon that increases your lich damage, your lich's AoE volleys or scythe can do up to maybe like a, I would say quarter, maybe a fifth of enemy's HP. In the lich form, you can possibly take out, if the potatoes are not seeing you, you can literally take out maybe half of somebody else's HP. And with a frenzy, I think it's gonna be a great choice. The most important, I believe, is actually gonna be Archer, called Calculation. Your damage to a target above 50% is increased by 15%. This is literally made for a Necromancer, because his damage above 50% sucks. His damage below 40% is amazing. So that's awesome. Necromancer, this symbol is garbage. It's a Slayers because you're always gonna be in the combat. Ghostly Viper, you cannot. It only taunts and it's good for PvE, but it's not good for PvP. We have a Gravitational Perpetration. Your impulse charge increases the character's damage by 12%. There's not many attacks that proc impulse charge, and most of those attacks are kind of a waste. Sometimes you want to do a gnarly AoE, which is left-right click. You put AoE and that activates the impulse charge. But other than that, you're actually not going to be using it. So don't worry about impulse charge, don't worry about this. I don't think it's that great. This one also is not that good. As a Necromancer, you're always going to be moving. Everybody always going to be kiting. This symbol, what it does, it procs mines underneath you if you're not moving for 5 seconds. As a Necromancer, you're constantly going to be wanting to be moving. This one is a must to have. It's a Knight, maxed out the Knight symbol. It reduces the crowd control duration or against you by 15%. And if your character is below 50% HP, its effect is doubled. When you get into Lich form, everybody tries to CC you. When you have the symbol, the CCs that they're gonna put on you will last 30% less. It is great. This one I want to play with. Stolen Initiative. Damage to stun opponents is increased by 20%. Basically, if you impact stun, if you're gonna stun somebody with an impact stun, which is gonna last 2 seconds, and you have 2 dot ticks, that 2 dot ticks will do 20% more damage. If the impact stun procs and you're gonna actually throw a skull at somebody, that will do 20% more damage. If you do a pain shock or paralyzing shock, I'm pretty sure this will also do 20% more damage, meaning it will proc Pally symbol. So I want to play with it, but I think it's gonna be a very good talent. But last but not least, and these two are a must to have. Alchemist has a 30-second internal cooldown, it procs, and for 10 seconds you do 15% more damage. Alchemist is a very fun class to play. I would recommend anybody playing it, and the symbol from it is one of the best. excuse me. And then the last one, Jinx. For any other class, you put a dot on the target. The dot on average here will do 275 damage for 6 seconds. 275 damage for 6 seconds. It is roughly about 1650 damage. But because it also at least gonna, in my opinion, well, if it crits twice, it will actually pay itself off. Also, having a Jinx will increase your impact, rate of impact stuns. Also, it will increase the rates of your lacerated wound procs. And it also an extra dot that you can put on a target that will increase your damage done to the target itself above 50%. Also, Jinx is a great dot because when you fear somebody, you have a 100% crit rate. In this game, any critical damage that you have here will also add it to the dots. So even if your dot does very little damage, the critical damage will buffer it up quite nicely. So if you have a Jinx on somebody and then you fear them and they have Jinx, lacerated wounds, your plague dot, and the skull throw on top of it, Jinx with all those damage multipliers can do probably, with my calculations, around 8 to 10k damage, which is extra 10% damage done to a target during the fear. So I think this is going to be a must to have. Now let's see how many total symbols do we have that are a must, and then the rest ones I would kind of leave it up to you to pick. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 maybe, 8, 7 and 8 maybe, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20 with the 2 maybes, so 18 to 20. The other ones, obviously it's up to you to decide, and I need to nerd craft on a few things here as well, like incoming damage and damage dealt I increased by 5%. In my opinion, this could be actually a very good symbol for Necromancer, because he is relatively tanky and he doesn't get focused quite a lot. So I think that might be actually a very interesting one. Also, with playing with a rapid attack for first or second of the fight. Oh no, wait, sorry, not that one. This one, using dash stuns nearby enemies for 1.5 seconds, and it can occur only once every 14 seconds. So breakout. So this could be nice too, because Necromancer gets kited a lot, and that's an extra stun on the target, especially if you're running with a monk. So there's a few other ones that I'm not sure of. And obviously, as I told you guys, you can have up to 29 symbols, so that actually leaves a few room of imagination. Now, any other dots you guys wanna discuss and wanna talk about? Also, this one I wanna talk about here. Impulse damage applies the effect to the enemy that inflicts the damage over time. I wanna see how useful the small crappy dots are. Like, say if you put a dot on the target and only does like 200, 300 damage, but if it crits and procs more damage afterwards, maybe it will actually become worth it. So there's a lot of still nerd analyzing shit I have to make in this video. But for now, this is what I have, this is what I'm going for the Necromancer. This is something similar I will want to run with a Witch, and with a Witch I also want to run maybe impulse damage. I want to see how Witch plays out. As far as I know, Witch has a great sustained damage, but where Witch actually flourishes is a really nasty burst damage and a high mobility. So I'm thinking of actually building my Witch around dash and around like impulse, high impulse damage. Other than that, guys, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you coming to my streams. Thank you for watching, and до свидания.